Hi, I'm Dave Koch. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're taking a look at pricing in your market and the different tiers of photographers that serve your market. If you are like me, when you started out, you tried to get every single job. And that's good for the hungry beginning photographer because not that many jobs come your way. But after a while, after you start to gain some experience and some name in the marketplace, you'll find out that there really are tiers to your market. And I think what you'll also find is not every photographer is your competition. And even in your market, they're not your competition because we don't all serve the same clients and we don't all serve the same needs for those clients. So if you've ever looked around and said, wow, they're charging that much, or oh my gosh, maybe I'm charging too much. If either of those things have happened to you when you look around your market, this is the video for you, so stay tuned. I'm going to break down the full spectrum in the field and where and how you should be setting your pricing levels. And that's not based on whether you shoot flambient or HDR or your level of editing or anything like that, but based on your business structure, your level of service, and where you fit into your local market, which is a much more important detail than whether you shoot HDR or flambient. I mean, let's face it, most realtors can't tell the difference anyway, can they? But your level of service, they can tell the difference. And that's what's going to keep them coming back. And that's where you should be tagging your pricing levels. Once you know your tier in the market, you know exactly where your pricing should be, and you can stop guessing. You know exactly how you're going to fit in. And most importantly, you know whether you've got upward mobility, and you can decide whether you want to change tiers and how to target that next tier for yourself. All right, let's talk about tiers. And this is, first off, not to run down anyone in any tier, because we all go through all of the different tiers at some point. We've all been beginners, and that doesn't mean that you're any less a photographer. It's your dedication and the work that you put in that makes you valuable. So even at a beginning level, you have value if you're pushing yourself to make your next shoot the best shoot. Oh, where have I heard that before? Anyway, let's talk about tiers. When you start off, you're what I would call a portfolio builder. You will take anything and everything just to get some shoots under your belt and just to get some experience. I remember my first year, let's see, I think my very first couple of shoots were HDR, and that didn't work for me at all. And then I bought strobes, and those weren't powerful enough because I think right after I bought strobes, I started trying to put strobes on light stands and using umbrellas. Went through that, and then I kept looking at the AD200 and I kept thinking, oh, that's ugly. What kind of light is that going to put out? It's not a normal flash. It's a weird looking flash. And then I got one and I found out that yeah, that's the lighting I use now day in and day out. But anyway, when you start out, you're a portfolio, you're a portfolio builder. You're learning. You're scrappy. You're trying to do your best job and build your portfolio. Your experience is low, and not every shoot turns out as good as you'd like. Hopefully, there's a progression. You see yourself getting better, but you're going to make a few mistakes along the way. This is probably the lowest tier of pricing, and rightly so. You're not delivering the value that some of the more experienced photographers can give. But there is a place in the market for that. There are a lot of homes and a lot of people that just can't afford $175, $200, $250 for a photo shoot. I know there's a lot of people looking down on people who come into the market and charge 125, 150 for 25 photos. And in some cases, they are bottom feeders. But in a lot of cases, they're people that are new to the market and just know their value, which is low. And so they're trying to build a portfolio. If these people work their way up and out of that and start charging more, I say support them. More power to them. They're the sort of photographer we need in the market. But if you just go in and you just think you're going to take over a market by undercharging, you'll survive. You'll do okay for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, but pretty soon you're going to be burnt out because you're going to be working your ass off and making no money. The object here is not to get as many jobs as you can as quickly as you can. The object needs to be long-term, and long-term means growth. And that means you've got to have your sights set further down the road than your next $125 job. Our next level are the side hustlers. They've got decent gear, sometimes even really good gear. And in fact, sometimes these guys have the best gear because they're either a trust fund baby or, they think gear makes the photograph or something like that. But they have a day job to support themselves. So they don't really care that much about real estate photography as a whole. They care about making sure that their cameras are beautiful and that they've got the newest and the greatest and the fanciest. And I don't think of these people as my competition at all. Usually their websites will show their real estate photography and their bridal photography and their engagement photography and their sports photography. And they're so all over the board that nobody will take them seriously in our genre because they're not a professional in that genre. They're all over the place. They may get occasional jobs, but they don't need a steady income from real estate photography because they've got a day job or something like that. They're going to get an occasional job. That's all you can say about it. It doesn't really affect you as a professional full-time real estate photographer. And people will use them once and then they go away because they don't do this enough or often enough and pay enough attention to do real quality work consistently. And they're spread too wide to look at real estate as their bread and butter. So they don't pay attention to things that you and I know are hard and fast rules, like toilet seats down and keeping those verticals. I've seen so many people that are bridal photographers and real estate photographers and this and that, and they have a good feel for light, but their walls go like this, and they just, people will see that and they'll just go, I don't know what's wrong with that, but it's not right, and they'll move on. The third level are the full-time professionals. These probably are your competition. These are people who have business licenses, insurance, and they depend on real estate photography for their livelihood. Again, it doesn't matter whether they're doing HDR, whether they're shooting their Matterports with a Ricoh or a Matterport 3. These are the people that are real estate photographers. These people should be charging a professional rate for the work that they do. These are the people who make all their income from this job, and their rates need to reflect that. There are different levels within this, to be sure, but within that, you can see the people who treat their clients well and do good customer service, and the people who are just out there shooting, returning pictures. And again, within that scope of professional photographers, there are layers. And the more you can add to your ability to provide value to your client, the more you can charge within that specific tier. And that's where you want to be. You may start at the bottom of that, but then you'll add Matterport, and then you'll add HD Photo Hub. and all these different things that make your realtors' lives a little easier. And the more you do that, the more value you add and the more you can charge. Our final fourth tier are the elite specialists. These are the cream of the crop in your community as far as photographers go. They shoot the luxury properties, the $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, $10 million homes, and they shoot them consistently, not just as a one-off. They're the people that have consistent clientele. They work as much as they want, when they want, and they charge top dollar for it. They well, we'll get into that a little bit later, kind of how you can tell when you're in that market. I hope this doesn't sound vain. I kind of feel like I'm at that point in my market, but you know, if you want to be really honest, these are the Emma Peters and the Mike Kellys and you know, those sorts of people. And I am definitely not in that group, but you know, these people may also be doing a lot of commercial shoots and stuff like that too, because they just have the ability and the need to do that level of photography. Now comes the time to be brutally honest. Let's figure out where you fit into that scheme of 4 levels. I think number 2 is pretty easy to dismiss. You wouldn't be watching this if you were number 2. You may be number 1, you may be number 3, and maybe you're number 4. Who knows? But the important thing is to honestly appraise your place in the market. And I can't stress this enough. I know a few photographers in the real estate world that are definite victims of Dunning-Kruger. And I think photography lends itself well to Dunning-Kruger. If you don't know Dunning-Kruger, it's a study that showed how when people first start out, they think they're so good and they're this good. And then they reach a point where they go, oh, shit, I don't know anything about this. And they go down into the valley of despair, and then they slowly work their way up. You know, if you are in your first to second year of real estate photography and you think you're in the elite group, yeah, you're a victim of Dunning-Kruger. Yeah, you need a little bit of an adjustment and a little bit of a reality check. You're not going to be in group 3 till you've fallen into that valley of despair and realize how bad you really are, because that's the only way to get better. And that's just an aside from me. I guess I'm a little, I honestly think you're not going to be good in this business. I mean, really good, until you've been shooting for 3 or 5 years, somewhere in there, unless you have a strong background in photography, composition, and things like that. Anyway, figure out where you are. You need to assess 4 factors: your technical skills, your systems and workflow. Is it all very haphazard, or do you have, as soon as you come back from a shoot, do you know exactly how you're going to download your images, where they're going to go? Do you have a system worked out for that? How consistent is your final product? Are some of your shoots really, really good and some really bad? Do you come back from some and say, oh, the ceiling was so low, I couldn't get really good shots there? Yeah, you're not that good a photographer if you're not consistent. And finally, how you handle your clients after delivery. And I guess I'm calling somebody else out, and he'll know who this is if he watches this. Hi, Steven. I'm going to cut that out. Anyway, if you're not willing to go the extra mile for your client's not going to go the extra mile for you. If you want good high-end clients, the higher-end luxury clients expect a high level of service. And if that means showing them how to unzip a file, if that means uploading their images to the MLS, you do that, because that's your level of service. That's what sets you apart and above your competition. So keep all that in mind when you're assessing where you are in the market. Some other things to keep in mind: do all of your clients sign a contract, or do you have a contract? If not, I don't know that you're even level 3 yet. There's nothing worse than charging like a professional and still being in that first level. You may get a few jobs and you may go, oh, look, I made blah, 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 blah this month. But you know what? That's going to, as soon as people see the quality, if your quality doesn't match what you're charging, you're going to stop getting jobs. That's why it's so important to honestly assess where where you are in the market and your quality of product. And like I said, for some reason, photography attracts people who are victim to Dunning-Kruger. And I think part of it, this is my own personal thought. I think it's fairly easy to go from like 20% good to 80% good. It's that last 20%, that 80 to 100%, that takes years and years and years of work. And each step is very small. It's little things that you learn. And mostly it's experience. It's doing that same sort of house 10 times, 20 times, that finally things click and things become more automatic. For me, I know a lot of times when I'm shooting, you know, a lot of people, what f-stop did you use? What shutter speed did you use? If you're still thinking in terms like that, you're not at a pro level. I'm always thinking about the composition and what that looks like. I rarely, if ever, even note what the exposure is, because honestly, I don't care. It has no bearing. As long as the exposure is correct, that's all I care about. So the object from here is to level up, to know that there are these different levels, and to figure out what you need to do to get from where you are to that next level, and to put those things into practice. Start working on customer service levels, start working on a contract, start working on making better compositions, take classes. There are plenty of, I take classes. It's an ongoing thing, and you're always striving to get better. And that's an important thing to keep in mind. One thing you should never do on your way up the ladder, so to speak, is to, know that you're charging 175 for a job, and you look at somebody and they go, oh, they're charging 600, 800 for that. First off, they're serving a different market. They're serving a different purpose. They're shooting at a completely different level than you. And they put a lot more time and effort into those pictures than you do, especially if you're shooting 3 to 5 homes a day. One of the first things, if you want to level up your quality, is to go from shooting a house in 30 or 45 minutes to shooting a house in 2 hours. And that's a difficult jump to make, but that is an important jump to make the quality happen. If you're playing around and you're learning lighting and learning how to use flash, my best advice is to first get a good solid shot. And then if you want to play with some techniques like I did when I first started using umbrellas or different things like that, get the shot that covers the room. Then start playing around and try and do it better. And take that extra half hour, 45 minutes to work on one single lighting technique and learn that and become proficient at it. Then move on to something else. Set some challenges for yourself. Go into rooms and say, hey, how am I going to do this without this or with that? Try and do rooms. Here's a really good experiment. Frame your rooms so that you always have windows in them and deal with it. That's a tough job. Learn how to do that. Set challenges like that. Let's get back to our tiers. There are real reasons why there are photographers in all 4 tiers. They all serve different markets, and they are all legitimate markets to serve. And so again, I am not running anyone down for being in any of these 4 tiers. They all have perfectly justifiable reasons for being there. But think on this. You don't go to Walmart to buy a Rolex. And with the idea that I was talking about you can't be everything to every customer, that I don't think anything drives that home more than that idea. The more you can set up your market based on pricing and quality, the more you're going to attract clients that want that level of quality and are willing to pay for it. And that's what you'll find. I turn down customers all the time these days because either they don't have the budget for what I need, or they don't need what I offer. But then there are other people who are selling $300,000, $400,000 homes, which are substantially below my average home that I would shoot. And I shoot for them all the time because they do want what I offer. And it's not about the price level of the house. It's about the expectations of the client and the market that they're selling to. And that is how you target who your client should be. So don't try and compete with everyone. Know what your lane is and be the best photographer you can be in that lane. And your bookings will be filled up and people will beat a door to your path. For me, kind of the realization, and again, I may be way off. I may be not judging this correctly, but I kind of feel like I made the jump from 3 to 4 when people stopped calling me because they needed photography and started calling me because, hey, you're the guy who shot this, or you're the guy who shot that. When people started coming to me because of the way I shoot and because they knew things that I had shot, I kind of feel that that's knowing that you've kind of turned the corner and become a real high-end photographer. Now my name sells in this market. People who have their homes photographed by me, it stands out and they know it and they seek me out to do that. And I think that's kind of, at least what I think, is the turning point into tier 4. So here's my big takeaway. Know your pricing level, know who your clients are, and stay in that lane. Or aspire to move up, but do it with planning and know what you need to do to raise your level of photography to attract that next level or tier of client. I think that's really important in setting your prices and setting them realistically. Don't set your prices so high. I want to be in tier 4, so I'm going to have tier 4 pricing, but be a level 3 photographer. People will not hire you for that. They'll know the difference because you don't have that level of quality experience or customer service. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you see these same 4 tiers in your market? Where do you think that you are in your market? What do you do to jump tiers? What have you found makes you a more attractive and a higher priced photographer in your market? Let me know in the comments below. If you've gotten something out of this, and I hope you did, make sure to like and subscribe. I'd like to have you on for the next episode because we'll be discussing how to stop wasting your time with your pricing structure. And I think that's a very important thing to learn. That'll be in the next episode. Anyway, until then, like I said, like and subscribe. I hope you got something out of this, and may your next shoot be your best shoot.